What is up, guys? It is AJ from MMA Experts, and we're talking about the UFC 252 full card. We're going to recap it, give you my thoughts. Wasn't my best picks of all time. I'll be 100% honest. I got some wrong there, but it was a fun card, some great moments, and definitely a historic main event of the evening. I'm going to talk about the undercard first. If you guys want to skip past it, feel free, but I am going to give the respect to these undercard fighters. So let's start it up. First fight of the night, Khama defeats Tony Kelly. He looked good. He did it well. Tony Kelly's got some damn heart and is a scrappy fighter, and so is Kai. And they put on a bit of a war in the first fight of the night. Back and forth. Give the respect to Khama. I did think Tony Kelly would edge him out just with the height advantage, but the height advantage was not as significant as I expected when I actually saw them next to each other. I think Tony Kelly maybe mismarked in his height there. He didn't look 5'10", or maybe Kai's just a little bit taller. But big win for Khama here against Tony Kelly. Moving up, Chris Daukaus, big knockout over Parker Porter. He went in there against Parker, looked slick, moved. Parker really didn't do much. He's got monstrous legs. He got cracked, put down, got cracked again, put out. Good stoppage. Congratulations to Chris Daukaus here, whose brother also made his UFC debut recently. Now, Liviana Souza, Ashley Yoder. I thought that it was leaning towards Yoder. Maybe I'm blind, maybe I'm crazy, but I kind of had Yoder winning that fight. But at the end of the day, I understand the Liviana Souza decision. Congrats to her. Yoder looked good, though. I think she definitely showed improved striking skill. I think she's a girl to watch out for in the bottom half of this women's strawweight division. She's still a fun fight. 7-6 as a pro, but at the end of the day, records don't matter in MMA because Liviana Souza is 14-2, and her level is very similar to Ashley Yoder, who's 7-6. It's all about matchups. But congrats, Liviana Souza there. So let's move up. Danny Chavez looked like a killer against TJ Brown. Beat his ass for 15 minutes. TJ Brown's wrestling was not getting going at all. He wasn't able to do much. He was just getting cracked, leg kicked, beat on by Danny Chavez, who's a guy to watch at 145. He's a fun fighter. I like Danny Chavez. A lot of knockout wins, hits hard, he rocks his opponents. I think Chavez is a fun 145er to keep an eye on. Now, Vera Jandiroba, Felice Herrig, I mean, what a performance by Vera there. Dominant. 1 minute 44 seconds. Taps out Felice. That's the win she needed to prove she's a legit contender at 115. I think she is. These girls should watch out. This girl's very scary. She's a bad matchup. I think Carla Esparza, who beat her, is still a tough matchup for her, but Carla's just a great wrestler with great top control. But these other girls need to beware. I think Vera Jandiroba is very dangerous at 115. Now, Vink Patel, Jim Miller, man, Patel put it on Jim. You know, he beat him by a unanimous decision here. Jim's an older guy, but no excuse. Vink Patel just was the better man on top, worked his game. Jim Miller, you know, he threw up some attacks and he fought well. He's Jim Miller. He's a legend of this game in terms of fights. Not a legend in terms of skill set, but he's got 35 octagon fights. He's a bit of a legend in terms of how active he is. He's a beast. And at the end of the day, Vink Patel put it on him. Fairly dominant win here. I'm happy for Patel. I think he's got an interesting future in this 155 division. I think he's a back half of the top 15 guy, without a doubt, and he's a fun guy to watch. Now, Merab Dvalishvili and John Dodson, great screaming match they had in there. I mean, it was Merab's fight. John Dodson just fights on his back foot the whole time. He doesn't really engage much. He kind of runs the whole fight. I don't like his style. I'll be honest with you. I think John Dodson would fight better if he was more aggressive. He has power. I don't know what he's doing. That Jackson Winkcamp has him doing that style, man. He's just such a counterpuncher. It takes away from his skills. Merab beats him. He doesn't put out enough. John Dodson maybe needs a new camp. I'm going to be honest with you. I think he needs a new style. He needs to change it up because what he's doing is not working. He's losing these fights. Yes, he won against Nathaniel Wood, but Merab is at level above Nathaniel Wood, and he's dominated for 3 rounds. I mean, he landed some shots. He can sit in there. He needs to be more active. They need to get him throwing more punches. Merab, though, moves up at 135. He said he wanted Sean O'Malley. Granted, that's not going to happen after O'Malley's defeat, but I think he gets a big fight at 135 here. He's a bantamweight to keep an eye on, without a doubt. Now, Daniel Pineda, Herbert Burns. Daniel Pineda worked Herbert Burns, man. He got cracked, though. His eye got shut pretty bad. Excuse me again. But other than that, Daniel Pineda looked good. Put him in the crucifix and beat him up. I think Herbert Burns maybe was a bit overrated, or maybe he didn't train. I don't know. Or maybe Daniel Pineda is just that damn good, and he's been underestimated for too long, and he's back in the UFC. I think keep an eye on Daniel Pineda at 145, man. He's good. He's a fun fight. He's a tough wrestler, good top control, and he's got power in his hands. He knows how to strike. He's not just one-dimensional. So I like Daniel Pineda. Now, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Junior Dos Santos, big knockout for Rozenstruik. I think you got to do Rozenstruik, Derek Lewis. Let's do it. Derek Lewis Rozenstruik is a huge main event fight you can put on free TV, maybe ESPN Plus. I think that sells the hell out of I mean, it just sells the hell out of maybe an arena if there was seats, because I think a ton of people would go watch that fight. It's two big ass heavyweight knockout artists. I want to see Rosenstruik fight Derek Lewis for Junior, maybe retire, maybe call it a career, because the matchups don't get easy from here on out. The elite guys in the top 10, I think, get the best of Junior at this point of his career. He doesn't have the durability nor really the speed to keep these guys off of him, or the power anymore. I think Junior needs to consider retiring, but if he doesn't, I like Alexei Oleinik for him next. That's a matchup I'd pick. Now let's move up. Marlon Vera, Sean O'Malley. Sad moment for Sean O'Malley. I'm a big fan of him, but at the end of the day, he lost to Marlon Vera, who was the better man that night. Beautiful leg kicks by Marlon Vera. Obviously, Sean did hurt himself, but those leg kicks did some damage too. Brutal elbow hurts Sean O'Malley. Herb Dean says, listen, let's call it. I kind of get it. I mean, I don't think that Sean O'Malley could have stood up, and Vera gets the win here. Vera moves up in this very, very stacked 135-pound division. Maybe you give him Rob Font next for Vera. Maybe Uriah Faber. Both those are fun fights. I'd like to see it. For Sean O'Malley, he's going to need some time off. We'll find out a matchup as he's planning his comeback. We'll definitely probably talk about it, because it'll be an exciting time to have him back, but he loses, falls to 12-1. Nobody's undefeated in MMA besides maybe Khabib, but fluky shit happens, and having a loss is not a bad thing. O'Malley, I definitely see a lot of potential in, but he did lose here tonight against Marlon Vera, who's very skilled. Now, moving up, we got Stipe Miocic. Daniel Cormier was the main event, was to determine the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time. You see that asterisk into the UFC heavyweight of all time. Let's not discredit Fedor Emelianenko. Stipe, though, he looked good, moved well, beats Daniel Cormier, outpointed him for 5 rounds. I thought it was a very fair decision. I mean, yeah, Cormier got poked in the eye, but he was losing that fight, and Stipe gets it done. Cormier blind out of that one eye for a bit, too. I do give him respect for fighting on and even landing some punches. But this was Stipe's fight, man. It's always a tough matchup between these two. Cormier is such a beast, but Stipe Miocic just a bit better. I think Stipe's legit at heavyweight, man. I think that he's definitely making his claim for the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time. I'm not going to discredit Fedor yet, though. I don't know. If he goes out there and beats Ngannou a second time, and if he fights John Jones, beats John Jones, now he's the greatest of all time in terms of heavyweight division. But if he loses to one of those guys, I think that his claim is definitely dropped back, and maybe he's even with Fedor at the best, I would say. But for Cormier, he's probably one of the top best heavyweights of all time, one of the top best light heavyweights of all time, maybe top 2 at light heavyweight, but he's not the greatest of all time, and that's cool. He's one of the maybe the top 15 greatest fighters to ever do it, but he's not the best, and you know what? That's okay. He's a great fighter. He's made a ton of money. Now, if there's one fight that I could see bringing him out of retirement, it's John Jones at 205 for the light heavyweight belt. He said he's only interested in fighting for titles. He doesn't see it happening. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that there's a possibility that the UFC says, let's do the Cormier trilogy with Jones. Why not milk that cash cow out is what they're thinking. I think Cormier will be like, fuck it. Let's make some more money. I already lost to Stipe. If I beat John Jones, at least I go out with a win over John Jones. If I lose to John Jones, fuck it. I lost to John Jones. It's all good. I've only lost to the greatest fighters in the weight class in UFC history. So to me, I think maybe he does it. Now, his eye might be a problem. I don't know if he'll be able to see ever again. Hopefully he does. I really fingers crossed on that, hope that he can. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do that fight. For Stipe, though, he's got to do Ngannou next. Jones is not next for him. Maybe you do Stipe, Ngannou, Cormier, Jones if Cormier wants to fight again. I know he said he's going to retire, but guys say they want to retire all the time and they come back. So I'm not going to say it just yet, especially with Dana saying he doesn't think he wants to retire. It's because I think Dana wants that John Jones trilogy, to be 100% honest with you guys. But overall, sweet card. I had a fun time watching. Obviously, I'm having a fun time talking about it to you guys right now. I can't wait for next weekend's card. Main event, Munoz versus Edgar. We saw a great pay-per-view here, though. Some disappointing fights for the contenders, man. Some guys that were really high prospect took some L's, and we saw Herbert Burns obviously exposed, and we saw the very exciting prospect Sean O'Malley beaten. I mean, disappointing night, but at the end of the day, that's the game. And there's a lot of good winners, though, and I'm excited to see where Pineda, Marlon Vera, Rosenstruik, Stipe all go from here, because they're all very high level in their weight class. And Merab Dvalishvili, let's not forget about him. He's a guy to watch out for at 135, and maybe he fights against Marlon Vera. I think that's a scary fight for Marlon Vera. His wrestling game is good, man. Merab is a pressure fighter up the ass. But all right, guys, that is pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on those post notifications. Also, guys, follow my social medias, Instagram and Twitter, and I'll see you all in the next video.